So I wanted to start off this section by having you just take a few seconds to think about how you react to your loved ones and how you communicate in general. Sometimes in the daily grind, it gets a little overwhelming and we often react into that situation. However, it's really important to just pause, count to 10 if you need to in your head, to think about how you want to respond. You don't have to come up with the right answer right off the bat. It's okay to wait, it's okay to pause, and sometimes it's even okay to change the subject. I think it's also important for us to realize that our loved one is still there. He or she is still the same person that you've always loved and cared for. It's just that the way in which they're interpreting the world is different now. So things that used to make more sense to them, whether it's things they're hearing or seeing or smelling or tasting, are now being interpreted by their brain completely different. So just take some time, think about how the world might look to them, and take the opportunity to relax and then respond. So the next thing I wanted to talk with you about is how do you communicate? We always think, well, we're just going to sit down and talk, or we're just going to tell them what we need or what they need to do. But what we want to do is take that opportunity to communicate by engaging. Just take a minute, think about engaging, sitting down directly in front of them, face to face, and making that eye contact with them. As you do that, think about using a quiet, easy, gentle voice, and even adding a little bit of an uplift, a little bit of tone increase as you talk to your loved one. These are a few things that, again, as we've lived with someone for a while or as situations change, we don't always think about that type of communication. But when we look at the individual's environment and how their vision is changing, sometimes we lose that peripheral view, which we've talked about in earlier segments. But what we have to remember is that if we approach them or if we try to talk to them when we're outside of their viewpoint, we're maybe not even being registered by them. So again, make sure that you're sitting directly in front of them, face to face, and engage with your eyes. The other thing is to think about facial expressions. A lot of what your loved one is going to understand is based off of what they see. So they may not be able to process everything that you're telling them, but they're going to be able to see the love in your eyes and the heart of your soul through the expressions on your face. So think about the way that you look when you talk to your loved one. Think about giving simple instructions. Think about it being a to-do. Try not telling them, don't do this. So a common thing we might want to say is, don't turn on the TV, but rather a better way to say that would be, let's get a book and read. So you want to give them the instruction of what you want them to do instead of what you don't want them to do. Also, give them plenty of time to respond. They may be able to answer your question or to do what you're asking them to do, but it just takes longer for their brain to tell their body how to respond. One of the things that we have happen a lot of times is that people will come to visit a loved one and they will automatically start talking about what's happening in that individual's world, what's going on. But the loved one with dementia may not recognize who it is that they're visiting with or what that connection is. So you as the care partner can help set up very successful opportunities for these visitors by giving them an example of, well, look, John, Mary came to see you today from church. She's so excited to talk to you about the gardens you helped get started there. So we're giving them who the person is, what that connection was, and how they used to be engaged. When an individual with dementia is experiencing the world, sometimes their orientation is off. So they may be thinking about a different time period, maybe something that's happened 5 years or even 20 years ago. It's important not to try to argue with your loved one about that. Rather, validate their feelings or their current places. For example, be with your loved one in that moment. If they're talking about how they want to talk to their mother, and how they need to share something with their mother, you could say something like, well, what would you say to your mother right now? If we could go for a walk with your mom, what would you tell her? And that gives them the opportunity to continue in the conversation without telling them that they're wrong or without completely changing the subject. So another example of showing a communication strategy with your loved one is to show acceptance for that person. So let's say that your loved one is looking very fearful or very worried. Coming up to them and again, being in their space, right in front of them, eye to eye, face to face, and saying, you look as if you're really worried. What is making you feel sad? So you're accepting that what they're feeling is real. And you're validating that you recognize that and trying to help them come to grips and hopefully express something or show you what it is that might be disturbing them. Sometimes we often get situations with people with dementia where the loved one is really confused about the need to reach out to someone who isn't here anymore. Maybe it could be something that a loved one is living in a long-term care setting, or maybe they're in an adult day service program. That loved one with dementia is anxious about getting out of that space that they're staying in. And so they have these seeking out behaviors of wanting to leave and repetitive questions of where is Johnny? Where is Henry? Trying to leave. So one of the skills that you can try using in this type of situation is to, again, acknowledge and accept that what they're feeling is visible and what you recognize their concerns. But then saying, it's really late today, so let's sit down and write a letter to Johnny and tell them what you would tell them if they could be here right now. So what this does is helps to kind of change the focus of that fear and that worry, but it also gives them something productive to do. If you would say, my loved one can't write anymore, or if your loved one even tells you that right away, that's okay. You can still keep moving forward with the same scenario. You tell me what it is you'd like to say to Johnny, and I'll write it for them. So again, it's just a great way to help comfort, accept, validate, and move on to a hopefully better, positive behavior. So we often see and hear from loved ones that individuals with dementia maybe just sit around or don't engage in their world like they used to. So what I encourage you to do is find some things that your loved one used to enjoy doing, present them with those, and then start engaging yourself. You can talk with them as you're engaged in that, and eventually your loved one might start participating with you as well. That focused attention is a really great way to help establish that relationship and keep that bond going through that day's activities. Okay, so what I wanted to start off with sharing is just that it's so important, even in our everyday stressful situations, to remember that our loved one is still in there. It's really easy to get overwhelmed and look at behaviors or situations and not think about this could just be a reaction to something that's happening in the environment. So when you start to feel concerned or you start to feel stressed out about a behavior or a situation, take the time to pause, count to 10 in your head if you have to, and remember, this is still my loved one in here. He or she is just interpreting the world differently than I am right now.